All right, time's up, time's up. Okay, now this wasn't a competition of any kind. I wasn't gonna look and see who got the most things on your list. That was not the intent here. And even though you had 5 minutes, as we go through the talk tonight, if you come up with another idea, you are welcome to add to your list. But we're gonna come back to your list at the end, okay? So, but it's kind of a little frame of reference, something to be thinking about as we go along here today. So I'm going to be arguing for this idea that gratitude may be evidence for the existence of God. So whenever we formulate arguments, we want to make sure we define terms.
Quick question, Carl. Are we recording?
Yes.
Awesome.
I'm on it. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to come over here. I'm gonna let you guys kind of freewheel it a little bit here. We'll put some ideas up on the board. So how should we define gratitude? What is it?
Appreciation.
Okay. Yeah.
There's usually an object for your gratitude. Like
Okay.
you're thankful to someone for it
Okay. Okay.
about something else.
Right. So there's a 2 and there's a 4 that kind of get tied into gratitude. Something we're thinking for, but we're thinking somewhat. Yeah.
I would say it involves recognizing what is the difference between like what you've been gifted and what you deserve.
Okay. So it's about a gift rather than, let's say, being earned.
Yeah, it's an appreciation that you don't deserve or didn't earn
Yeah.
what you got.
It has to be a very conscious acknowledgement.
Okay, so it's a conscious thing. It's not accidental. It's intentional. Yeah, good.
You don't always know who you should be grateful to for certain things.
Right, so that's what we're saying here,
Right.
right? It's going somewhere, right?
It's definitely like a felt, almost emotion kind of.
Okay, good. All right, so it falls in the category of emotions.
It expresses itself in some way.
Okay,
Expected
So,
to express itself in some way.
I want to say it. So even though it's emotional, it needs to work its way out somehow in an expression. Otherwise, it kind of falls flat,
Yeah.
right?
Someone's like the idea how like parents make their kids like write thank you notes for their kids for like Christmas, for instance.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. You're not. If you're really gonna be thankful, something has to come out of it.
Humility.
Okay. I'll elaborate on that just a little bit.
You're humble because you appreciate it and it was done for you.
Okay. All right. So there's some facet of humility to it. Okay. Okay. These are good. So let me show you kind of a working definition for gratitude. Then see how well you guys hit the mark here. A sense of wonder and thankfulness for a positive outcome from an external source. So it didn't come from you, it came from outside. It's distinct from indebtedness. So I think we got that. This is something you got instead of earned, came as a gift. Thanksgiving, which comes kind of in tandem with this idea of gratitude, is the expression. So we got this idea of expression that we talked about, that's good, of appreciation to the giver for what has been received. So you guys captured that up there. And then psychologists take a look and say, gratitude can kind of come in a range and as an emotion. You can be strongly felt or weakly felt. And your sense of gratitude decreases when there's some kind of expectation of reciprocity or something. I'm doing this because, I'm getting this because I did this, as opposed to being a surprise or completely unearned. Then that sense of gratitude is even greater. Okay? All right, so I think we have a good sense of what gratitude is. Okay, and we'll keep those up there just as a reminder to us. So here's the other thing is, and someone mentioned this, is that there is a sense of intention behind it, either from the gift that was given or the act of giving thanks is intentional. It also presupposes some judgments of good and bad. You have to be able to recognize, hey, this was a good thing that was done to me, as opposed to a bad thing. All right, so here's the argument that the universal human experience of gratitude for the good in life is best explained by the existence of a divine giver. Our capacity to be thankful points to a God who is the ultimate source of all that is good. That's what we're going to be arguing for. Realize that this argument is teleological, which means what? Who remembers what teleological means?
Relating to purpose.
Right, it's relating to purpose. There is some purpose behind it, drawing from our sense of appreciation for the world and personal conscious experience of giving thanks to an ultimate benefactor. Okay, that's the argument. So, what I want to think about as we think about arguments for the existence of God, remember we keep talking about this idea of there being a cumulative case. This is not, we're not looking for one argument that's the end all of all arguments. What we're impressed by is not one particular argument, but it's the plethora of arguments that are out there. And I like what Daryl Boehm always says, it's like there are so many arguments for the existence, it's almost embarrassing, right, to say that there's not God. But what we notice with the cumulative case is that a lot of these overlap. There's some intertwining in the rope, so to speak, that we always talk about for the cumulative case. And in particular, for this argument, I think the argument from religious experience, as well as the argument from desire, really kind of overlap this argument from gratitude. So let me just talk about those two arguments for a minute, and you'll see what I mean. So in the argument from experience, here's what Richard Swinburne says. He says, if someone has an experience, and this is what we think of in terms of gratitude, it's an experience that we have, it's internal, then they are justified in believing that they had that experience, provided they have no epistemic defeaters of that experience. Does everyone know what I mean by that? You have somebody say, no, the reason you had that experience was this. Okay? You're not correctively perceiving it. The overwhelming testimony of so many millions, and this is what we're arguing with from that argument from gratitude, is that it's this universal experience. So similar to religious experience, there are so many people to occasional experience of God must be taken as a tipping the balance of evidence decisively in favor of the existence of God. It's just overwhelming how many people will say, I've had this God kind of experience. Now, a couple comments to that. Realize this is not just about Christianity. This is about the religious experience of all cultures, and so we'd want to say the same thing in terms of gratitude. Do we see this happening across all cultures in its universality? We recognize that there are certain cultural biases that may influence the experience, but not all. And so, like the argument from religious experience, I think for argument for gratitude, we wouldn't have to say that every person has to feel this sense of gratitude for this to be true. Okay? And that everyone doesn't have to have identical experiences with it. That's not a requirement. We have just like this vast majority of people who are experiencing. And then the argument from desire, we talked about this earlier, so Peter Christi sees this. He says, every natural or innate desire in us points to a corresponding real object that can satisfy the desire. So when we recognize a good thing that's come our way, we seem to have this innate desire to respond to that. And so the question is, what are you responding to? So there's I think this is kind of a connection with that. His minor premise is that there exists in us a desire which nothing in time, nothing on earth, no creature can satisfy. So if we really start thinking about the things that we're thankful for and to whom are we thankful for, we reach a point where it cannot be tied to a person, a singular person, that there's something beyond that we want to direct our gratitude toward. And so, because there's nothing that exists outside of time, earth, which can satisfy this desire, so therefore, there must be a God out there. Okay? So a couple things with that. So remember, when we're thinking about argument from desire, we're thinking about things that are natural or innate, and I think we would say that's true for our sense of gratitude. It's something that does come naturally. It's not something that is compelled. It's not something that's forced upon us. It just comes to us naturally. But realize this is something that we affirm by introspection. I can't get data on it. There's no empirical data on your gratitude and how grateful you are. And so Peter Kreeft, he talks about the argument desire, that the way it works on us in terms of as an argument for the existence of God is that it doesn't compel us, but it does appeal to us. And I think this is the same thing for argument from gratitude. And so it points us in a direction of something greater. It's definitely hinting at something. So let's talk about this universal human experience. I'm just going to kind of take a little bit of a broad swath and see what you think here. So what about in Buddhism? If you are from the Buddhist tradition, do you think gratitude is part of your worldview? Okay, so I robbed this from the internet. Come on, where are you? Oh, there it goes. So here's just a quote off the internet from someone's writing about, a Buddhist who's writing about Buddhism. So I'm thinking it's a trusted source, okay? It says the word for gratitude in the Buddhist tradition is katamnuta in Pali, and it implies alongside an emotional response a kind of knowledge. Literally, it means knowing and recognizing what has been done to one for one's benefit. Gratitude leads us to a sense of our interdependence in this world. Perhaps it was not too strong to say that it has something of the transcendental to it. That was something that kind of caught my attention. But they're not tying the sense of gratitude to just a person or an object. There's something that transcends all that. What about in Hinduism? Any gratitude in Hinduism? Again, I robbed the internet. So here's some Hindu writing about Hinduism. It says, gratitude is a quality of the soul. It does not depend on how much we possess. Its opposite, ingratitude, is a quality of the external ego, which is like bad in Hinduism. When we abide in soul consciousness, we give thanks for whatever we have, no matter how little or how much. When in ego consciousness, we have never grateful or satisfied, no matter how much we have. So it's kind of the bad side of us. Gratitude and appreciation are the key words for a better life. They are the spell that is cast to dissolve hatred, hurt, and sadness. the medicine which heals subjective states of mind, restoring self-respect, confidence, and security. That sounds good. So gratitude seems to be a component there. How about in Islam? Are Islams grateful? Well, here's what this person says. And of course, gratitude reminds us that everything that happens to us comes from God and that we shouldn't take the many bounties in our lives for granted. He quotes the Quran. The Quran says, and whatever of blessings and good things you have, it is from God. And gratitude is not just about giving credit where credit is due. Gratitude is essential for our own spiritual and emotional well-being. So in Islam, they recognize that there is some actual personal benefit from acting in gratitude. Here's an interesting one. Thank you, universe. This was a letter that was written. Dear universe, I hope this message reaches you with warmth. Although I know you exist beyond the realm of ordinary letters, but we share a heartfelt connection, and I believe you listen and communicate. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude and deep appreciation for everything that you have done for me. Thank you, universe, for being a constant source of guidance and protection throughout my journey. When no one else was there, you were my unwavering support, and I'm profoundly grateful for that. In my darkest moments, you helped me believe in myself again, reminding me of the strong and resilient person I am. You consistently illuminated the correct path for me to follow, offering clarity when I needed it most. What do you think about that one?
If you put in God instead of universe, it actually makes sense.
Isn't that interesting? Okay. So now, this is definitely not coming from a materialist. Okay? If a materialist were to start waxing like this, I'd say, sir, you need to understand that Saturn does not give a whit about you. You got nothing from the universe. I think this is probably coming from some New Agey kind of person or a pantheist or something like that. But what do we notice here?
It's directed toward creation instead of the creator.
Well, I that could be arguable, because what created, especially if it's like pantheism, where God is all and all is God kind of thing, and there's a conflation between what exists and where God is, if that's the case, right? But at least there is, to me, this sounds so silly. And I think you're right. You put God instead of universe, and then it makes a whole lot of sense. That we're directing it to a person, and a blind force out in the universe doesn't seem to act personally like this is suggesting. Right? But there's this idea of transcendence. It's something beyond planet Earth that we need to be directing our gratitude. Here's an interesting one. How about giving thanks to plants? As herbalists, everything we use comes from the living earth and from nature herself. Gratitude is a powerful tool of connection. It allows us to say to another being, I value you, I respect you, I am honored with the gifts you provided. Gratitude to the plants takes them from an object we harvest to a trusted ally, friend, and companion.
This feels like somebody who believes that Mother Earth is actually a thing.
Okay, but this isn't even Mother Earth. This actually it kind of points to nature, and then there's plants underneath nature, and that we're supposed to be directing thanks to the plants. Yeah.
Isn't being grateful to plants kind of like being, if you believe that plants are capable of receiving gratitude, do you think it'd be kind of like being grateful to like a guy whose TV you stole?
Is what?
To like a guy whose TV you stole, or like more accurate, a guy whose baby you stole?
Okay, well, all right. So yeah, I think you're on the right track there. I think this is a little bit misdirected, because the idea is that there is a giver and receiver. And do plants really do any giving? Now, I was joking with my students when we would talk about ecology and we refer to plants as producers. And I'd say, why do you think plants are called producers? And they would say, my students would always say something like, well, because they make food for us.
Food for them.
I said, are you sure about that? Let's think about what that would look like. There he is, a blade of grass out in the field. And the sun is coming up. And it stretches its blades of grass and shakes off the dew and says, oh, look, over there. There's a cute little bunny. And I think I'm going to make him some food. That's like Disney thinking, right? No, yeah.
Could probably only be argued in the case of fruit, since plants specifically produce those to spread their seeds. It's like, but it's not like a pure just giver receiver in this scenario. It's more
Right, it's-
symbiotic.
Right, it's a trick, and there is some kind of reciprocity that's going on there. Isn't truly a gift, right? So one of the things I like in this is that there is this idea. He says that plants are a trusted ally. Now, in some sense, I don't think they realize this, but in some sense, they're right, because in Scripture, we find that nature itself is actually called to be grateful. Did you know that? So in Psalm says, all the earth worships you and sings praises to you. They sing praises to your name. So this is not just people. This is all the earth. Psalm 103, bless Lord, all his works in all places of his dominion. And when it says all his works, if you read the whole psalm, it talks about aspects of creation that he's talking about. So all those works is all the things he's made in creation. The Lord is good to all. His mercy is over all that he has made. All your works shall give thanks to you, O Lord, and all your saints shall bless you. If you read Psalm 145, it talks about how God is feeding the lions and the other animals, and therefore they are giving thanks to God. And then remember this one, Jesus going to Jerusalem, Palm Sunday, and the Pharisees want to quiet the crowd down because they're being too noisy. And Jesus says, what? I tell you, if these were silent, my disciples, if these were silent, the very stones would be crying out. So that's interesting to me, that nature itself also has the ability, the capacity to give thanks to God. So in that sense, they're kind of like our allies, because that's what we're expected to do. All right, so now here's something to think about. So we've talked about a breadth, a wide swath, a wide breadth of different cultures, different belief systems, and gratitude. So what about in the Christian worldview? Is there anything distinct in the Christian worldview as far as gratitude goes? Turn that to you. What do you think?
So the first thing would be the subject of gratitude, or at least the ultimate subject of gratitude. In Christianity, we understand whenever we show gratitude, we also show gratitude to God. Like, if I show gratitude to my parents, I'm also showing gratitude. I need to also be showing gratitude to God, because God's the one who gave me my parents. In the same way that, like David says, not only have I sinned against, I sinned against Uriah, and I sinned against God foremost.
Okay, true. But I'd say, but we're looking for a distinctive. So remember, even as in the Islamist would say everything is coming from God. And so that I don't think it's true, but I don't think it's distinct. What else?
I think gratitude for everything.
Okay. What does everything mean?
Everything.
Okay.
Anything you could think of that you have.
Right. So good and bad?
I would argue, yeah.
Yeah. So Paul really throws the gauntlet down for us. Very challenging here. So in 1 Thessalonians says, rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances. Now realize who he's writing to in these letters. By and large, he's writing to a persecuted church. So in the middle of your persecution, you need to be giving thanks. But now we might walk away from that and say, okay, I don't have to thank him for my persecution, but in the middle of my persecution, I should be able to thank God for something. But darn it, that doesn't get us off the hook, because in Ephesians he writes what? Give thanks always and for everything. For everything. That's different. I think in all the other examples I gave you, we're only giving thanks for the good things, the bounty that we have received, if you remember some of those comments. But now we're changing it. We're saying we're going to thank God for everything.
I'm now thinking there are some things that we maybe shouldn't thank God for. Sin is the example I came up with.
Okay,
And
all right.
yeah,
Fair, well, except that sin is maybe you have been sinned against, right? And so we'll talk about why we might be able to do that. But so here's another interesting thing. Remember this from Philippians? Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Now let's think about that. What is Paul telling you to do? So you're having trouble. You're going to bring all your concerns to God. And it says, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. What does that mean?
I mean, in a weak sense, it means that your thanksgiving is not contingent on you getting the answer to your prayer that you wanted. I mean, I think it's a broader meaning than just that, but that's kind of like the starting.
No, I think you're on the right track there. Now we're saying we're going to thank God in advance. Right? Here's my trouble, God. I'm going to lay my trouble up to you, and I'm going to receive whatever answer you give me to my prayer. Isn't that interesting? Might not be what you wanted, right? Because that's what Thanksgiving is. Thanksgiving is saying, I receive what you have given to me. And that's how our prayer is supposed to be couched. Here's my trouble, God, and whatever you decide to do, I will accept it. So why can we be giving God thanks for everything, even the bad stuff that's going on in the world? Well, I think it's because of this, what Paul writes in Romans 8, where we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. And again, Paul's writing to a persecuted church in Rome. And what is he telling them? All the bad stuff that's going on in your life, guess what? God's bigger than that. And he can work all that bad stuff for his purposes. He will accomplish it. Now, it might not be for your comfort or your convenience, but God has purposes in mind, and he is not lost on this. He's not on the losing end of the stick. God is in control, and he will make all these. So we can give God thanks for those things because we know that he's working in them. Here's the big one, though, and I'm surprised no one came up with this. It's the one thing we as Christians are thankful for that no other worldview is thankful for. Right? What are we thanking God for?
The gospel.
What the gospel, the heart of the gospel is that we have been redeemed. We have been saved from our sins because of the work of Christ on the cross.
Well, and it's all of our other thanksgivings are subsets of our thanksgivings for the gospel.
Oh, truly, truly. Because this is like the point of everything, isn't it? You know, and what do we think about the gospel? He said it's this free gift of God that has been given to us. It's nothing that we have earned. So in the most absolute sense, we talked up here, we said it's a gift rather than something that is earned. And the greatest amount of gratitude that we have is for things that we have absolutely not earned in any way. And that would be the case here. Okay, so would anyone object to this as an argument for the existence of God? How about this one? I don't believe in God. And yet, I benefit from living a life of gratitude, of just being a grateful person. I don't need God to explain my emotion of gratitude. Or this one, kind of tangentially related. We simply have evolved a sense of gratitude because it improves our ability to be social and to cooperate. So in other words, I don't need a God to explain this emotion of gratitude that I have. So I'll turn it to you guys. How would you respond to that? Eric?
The second one, I wrote down that if gratitude did actually come from evolution, I really think that evolution would have picked whoever is better at pretending to be thankful rather than whoever is actually thankful.
That's an interesting thought. Because a person who can pretend to be grateful might get more things, maybe. So it's not maybe genuine, not heartfelt. Claire?
I'd also say that gratitude isn't necessary to cooperate, and evolution is primarily focused on eliminating organisms that don't have a necessary function.
Okay, good. Yeah.
It doesn't really give a satisfying idea for why we have gratitude, since there's obviously typically an object of gratitude that is like to have gratitude for where there's not an object doesn't make as much sense, I would say.
Yeah.
And it would require more effort to explain why we feel that way, even if there is no object of
Good.
gratitude.
Good. Yep.
Yeah, there's not really a whole lot of examples of gratitude outside of humans.
Okay.
Animals are pretty brutal.
True. But even on the human standpoint, if we just say gratitude within humans, it's just something we evolved. So I don't have to look to the whole animal kingdom. We can just look at humans. Yeah.
I was just going to say, they're just simply wrong, since gratitude does not improve our ability to be social and cooperate, at least not in a self-serving way. I mean, if you simulate, there have been simulations using tools like the prisoner's dilemma and stuff, and by and large, the most effective strategies are moderately forgiving tit-for-tat strategies,
Okay.
not gratitude-based
Okay,
strategies.
not good.
Gratitude tends to make you, in games like this, it tends to make you the sucker, and you lose out over time.
Okay. So there's still kind of that fight to obtain things to survive rather than just being grateful for getting something. Yeah.
To the first one, it's like, well, even if you don't believe in God, you benefiting from a life of gratitude would make sense if a God created gratitude. That would, be in line. If God made gratitude and willed for you to be thankful, then that's evidence for God. You're benefiting from it.
Yeah. Good.
I was just to kind of build off of what Grayson said, it's sort of a non sequitur. It's like people who counter the moral argument by saying, but I'm an atheist and I'm moral. That's actually immaterial to the discussion. The argument wasn't that you have to know God to be grateful, or that you have to know God to do morally correct things. The argument is that the existence of gratitude is what implies the existence of God.
Right. Very good. Okay, you're catching on here. Yeah, I think you're wrong. I wrote some just thoughts here just to make sure I captured some things. So, for one thing, we'd say, yeah, it's true. We can't argue with if you being a truly grateful person is beneficial to you, it makes you feel good. It makes you more agreeable. It makes you get along with more people. Yeah, I'm glad you recognize that. But that's, like you're saying, that's not the argument. That's not the argument. The question is, where does this whole business of gratitude come from? Okay? And realize there are a lot of things that God bestows on people, whether they believe in God or not. The rain falls upon the righteous and the unrighteous. So just because you happen to benefit from it, doesn't mean that you can explain your sense of gratitude away. That you don't have to have God. But here's the other thing I was thinking about, is we do have this thing called ingratitude. People are ingracious. And if we think about something that is evolved because it benefits you, helps you survive better, then why wouldn't everybody, as a default, have this sense of gratitude?
I think the answer to that is that in any trait you can measure, there is variability. And the idea is that, you know, if being tall, say, helps you pass on your genes, then you're still gonna have short people, but they're not gonna pass on their genes. And
Okay,
yes.
but so here's the thing to think about though, and you guys captured it up here, is that it's a conscious act. It's something that we exercise as the will. It's not just this like reflex action that we have. So some people have the reflex of gratitude and some people don't. That's not what we see with gratitude. We see that gratitude actually is an act of the will. You actually decide to, especially when it comes in terms of that expression, how we choose to express that gratitude, that becomes an act of the will, not just a biochemical reaction. So, and it's interesting, you know, when Paul's writing to Timothy, said, when he's talking about the later days, that people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful. You know, so Paul recognizing this is a character. Think about all these other things that he's putting ingratitude alongside with, right? There's kind of decided sinful acts. But here's the thing, is that what it fails to do is to explain away that universal sense that people have of expressing their gratitude to something transcendent. And remember what we said about the religious argument. It doesn't mean everyone has to have this. But for those who do, how are you explaining that? And recognize that this is what we would call an abductive argument. This is not an inductive argument or far from a deductive. We're saying, what best explains this emotion of gratitude and our desire to express it in giving thanks? Is it best explained by some wave the magic wand evolutionary process that gave us that? Or is it because there actually is an ultimate giver out there that has bestowed good things upon us? So let's think about this. Run a list down here. So why should we think that God best explains what we defined as gratitude over some naturalistic explanation? So here's some things to think about. See if you agree with me or not. I think a personal God makes sense of the capacity of willful gratitude. It's that act of the will, that we are made in the image of God, and because we have that will, we offer up gratitude, we offer up thanksgiving. This idea that God is actually omnipresent, so everybody, everywhere, has this longing to give thanks to some grand giver out there because he is everywhere. Because who are you giving thanks to? Well, it's a God who's everywhere. The idea that we have a benevolent God who is going to give us good things. make sense of this universal sense of receiving some benefit. That we have a creative God, that he creates all kinds of diversity and things for us to appreciate and enjoy, things that we can be grateful for. And then more particularly on the Christian side of things, when we think about that little higher expectation in terms of our sense of gratitude, that we have this calling from conscience and from creation to respond to God's gift of salvation. We recognize we are sinful people and that we need to turn to God for our salvation. And that we have a God of incarnation. So one of the things we think about is, if we have someone we want to complain to about bad things in our life, well, what better than a God who actually has suffered among us, and he can understand those things. So we can give God thanks for those things. And ultimately we think about that there is a God of justice. So despite all the bad things that are going on, we can be grateful in those things because we have a sense of justice. But this is, if you're coming from a naturalistic worldview, and you recognize bad things going on in your life, how do you have to respond to that from a naturalistic standpoint? Oh well, that's just the way it is. You should have no sense for justice or hope for any kind of, taking care of the bad in the world and putting things right. And so it's interesting, I did put the whole thing up here. So in Psalm 96, this is so interesting. He said, let the heavens be glad and let the earth rejoice. Let the sea roar and all that fills it. Let the field exult. So the plants growing in the field. Remember our plants were giving thanks. The field exult and everything in it. Then shall all the trees of the forest sing for joy. So all of it, and what are they singing about? Before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples in his faithfulness. So even the psalmist David had this overarching sense that there is a God of justice over there, and it's not just us who are thanking God for that, but it's all of creation who is going to be doing that. So there we go. I've made my case. So what do you think? Should we add it to the list? How many?
Are you gonna present it to the EPS?
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're gonna next summer or next fall. I'll go to the EPS and we'll present this as a new argument for the existence of God. What do you think? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay. So interesting. Just something I was thinking about. So now go back to your list. Think of that list that you wrote down. So here's what I want you to do. Now take a look. See, these are all the things you said you were thankful for. So for each of the things that are on your list, to whom? You look down that list. To whom would it be most appropriate to express your thanks? Now, I get it. For some of those, it might be a person that you might give thanks for. But how many of those would it be most appropriate to directing your gratitude toward God? When we were talking to the kids on the campus last Friday, a lot of them said, well, I'm thankful for my family. Cool. That's really good. Yeah, I'm glad you are thankful for your family. But then I would turn the question and ask, well, who are you going to thank for your family? Because your family didn't give you your family. Think about that? Now, there might be certain things about, that your mom does that you might thank your mom directly, but for that family unit, who are you thanking your family unit for? So look at your list for a minute, and take a look. What do you notice?
I have 13 things on my list, and for eight of them, it makes the most sense to be thankful to God, straight up, unequivocally.
Yeah.
The rest of them, it's like a series of people that I mostly don't even know who they are.
There's a person behind that thing. Yeah.
Several people.
Okay,
usually.
several. Yeah, yeah.
I'm looking over 'em and I can see how the Lord's moved me through my life, work, education, ministry, etc. And it's just like He's been there as I look back.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. And even in places where you might think a person, there's still behind that is God. Definitely seems to be kind of working
How
behind.
did I get there to meet that
Yeah.
person?
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts or questions before I land it back? Is it Grayson or Devin? Devin. Or Devin going to close us out. Final thoughts. All right. So carry that to your Thanksgiving table next week. See what people think. Yeah.
I don't know if it was Narnian Chronicles or what, where C.S. Lewis talks about, or in the storyline, that all of creation, it was when creation happened, the animals were, growling or whatever, singing, whistling, or whatever they do, loudly.
Mm-hmm.
And the bees were out there, and everything was it was noisy.
Yeah.
And that was good.
And that was good.
Yeah. And because it's life,
Yeah.
taking place.
Yeah. There's that whole expression. Yeah. Cool. Very good. All right.